Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. We'll begin by looking at a map of the last 24 hours of total accumulated precipitation across the United States. We just want to take a moment at Nutrien just to say thank you to all the servicemen and women who are right now actively serving in the U.S. military, and thank all of those that came before us to preserve the liberty that we have in this country. And on this Memorial Day, we'll most certainly be celebrating that liberty. Well, when we look here at this map, it's amazing. One of the biggest events we have on Memorial Day weekend across the country is the Indianapolis 500. And it was a very tough forecast. Remember, we were talked about last week, hey, there's going to be quite a bit of showers and thunderstorms parked along a barrier that kind of sat like this. And what we can see is if I take that drawing off, look, there was one little hole right in through here and through central Indiana that early morning thunderstorms passed through, and then it kind of cleared out and they got the race in. But for some folks, the last couple of days have been incredibly tough. We've seen rain spread back through parts of the Central Valley of California. We've seen a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity in the Intermountain West, and then we've brought more flooding rains to places that have been absolutely soaked with precipitation. We'll take a look at that in a few seconds here. Looking at our storm reports, we can again just see this kind of ring of fire pattern. We have this ridge sitting here, and the precipitation, the severe weather all around it. In both cases, what you see here. And just adding up over the last couple of days, nearly 600 reports or over 600 reports of severe weather. Some of the storms are really nasty, very close to where I live there in central Illinois. And Nutrien's Jason Little just sent me a picture of one of these large trees on his property that was just completely wiped out by the power of the wind of some of these squall lines that passed through. So this is what a lot of us are dealing with right now. If it's not flooding, it's severe weather. And it's been just one of the roughest planting time periods we have on record. And here's what's going on. If we just take a step back and look at what the atmosphere is telling us, we can clearly see the influence of that ridge over the southeast. Look at the winds just kind of spiraling around it in this direction. We're just continuing to feed the same things I've been talking about. You can see a front sitting here. You can see the more complicated frontal structure that's moving through the central part of the United States into the Midwest and the Great Lakes states. And it'll be along those boundaries that we're going to continue to watch for the threat of severe weather. So on your Memorial Day, if you are inside of the regions that you see here, kind of color-coded in the yellow there, that slight risk, into even in the enhanced risk, we're talking about a significant chance today of seeing some more very, very strong thunderstorms, many of which will be severe. And again, it's just where that warm, moist air is kind of funneling back into this frontal structure that's just been in place across the midsection of the country for a while. I mean, we're really developing some pattern fatigue here, just to say the least. So while the southeast is baking under some serious heat, midsection of the country, parts of the Corn Belt are dealing with a lot of adverse weather. So this is for Monday. This is what the day on Tuesday looks like. So again, we see the main frontal system. We'll see this in detail in a few minutes, kind of shoving a little bit to the east here with time. But again, a large region of the country under the gun for the potential for severe weather. And then this is what things look like for the day on Wednesday. So we're just continuing with this pattern. Let's just take a moment here and take a look at what we expect to see Monday into Tuesday, because many people are going to be out celebrating Memorial Day here, and I want to just show you what the forecast looks like. So as we animate this forward, you can see the deeper upper level trough that's out there in the west. That's that counterclockwise rotation you see moving just north of the Four Corners states there into Wyoming. We do see the thunderstorms building across Iowa, Wisconsin, moving through northern Illinois and Indiana, and of course through Michigan throughout the day. So this is what we're watching here throughout the day on Monday. Multiple chances in there of having a lot of strong to severe thunderstorms that will stretch from Nebraska into parts of southern South Dakota, but Iowa, Illinois, southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana. Just watch it one more time. You can see where the main threat is by looking at our high-resolution rapid refresh model here. So be careful in those states today if we're out celebrating. Keep a close eye on the radar and make sure you even just look up at the sky. It'll often telegraph to you what's going to come next. Now, why is this all happening, and is there still, this pattern change I've been discussing? So the answer to the second question is yes, there is. But one of the things we just have to get rid of is you can just see the influence of this flow pattern. We still have a trough. Remember, we knew it was going to be in the first week of June where this pattern is going to break down. But what we've got going on up here is substantial, and that is a sizable ridge that has moved in to parts of Western Canada. So that is going to help break this pattern down, because you're going to see that ridge kind of just barrel its way through parts of Western Canada, into the Canadian prairies, and down into parts of the United States. And that's going to help to shift this ridge with time back to the east. Back to the west. And it's also at that point going to just take our whole pattern and change it. And a lot of things are going on here. So we have stuff going on with the Madden-Julian oscillation, with the way that El Nino is working. We're going to get rid of some of our high latitude blocking, and that's going to basically take the pattern we've been in, which looks just like this, and give us a much different look once we get past the first few days of June here. But unfortunately, just looking over the next 10 days, we got a lot more precipitation coming in that same corridor. I feel like I've been drawing that same shape on maps for a long time. But look, you can see the influence of the ridge starting to shift back to the west, and that we're starting to bring more precipitation in here into parts of Virginia, North and South Carolina. But this map from the European model, this is the latest model run we had available early this morning, and what it shows you here is just a lot more precipitation on the way for the midsection of the country. And the flooding problem we're dealing with isn't going away anytime soon. We still have 600 gauges near or above flood stage. And this is the same region that is going to continue to get hammered here as we go through the end of May and into the beginning of June. Now, some interesting news about all of this. There is something called the Morganza Floodway down in Louisiana, and it's a large flood control system that basically can alleviate some of the pressure farther south on the river once we get down very close to the Gulf Coast here. And what you see here in this image is that spillway, or the floodway, the management. And they've only opened it a few times historically. I believe, if I've looked at the right resources here, they've only opened it 3 times. And as of early in the morning, they were still considering opening it again very, very soon, just to relieve it. And apparently, it can release over 500,000 cubic feet per second, just to alleviate some of the pressure on the downstream levee system that we're talking about here for New Orleans and places like that. So this is historic flooding. I just want to make sure that we know that. Many of us across the midsection of the country are well aware of how bad it's been. So just looking over your next 5 days, because the pattern still features this, this same kind of thing. We have this big ridge that's moved into western Canada, but this trough over, over the southwest, and the ridge over the southeast. We don't shake that same pattern. That's why you see over the next 10 days the wetter pattern. Well, much of that's coming in the next 5 days. Notice once you get out to the day 5 through day 10 pattern, I'm just showing you the European model here, we kind of break things down a bit. We're going to be watching for the development of a deeper trough in this area. It'll have a bit of it that kind of extends back to the Four Corners states, but we are going to see a warm-up for parts of California. The warm-up has already begun for parts of the Pacific Northwest, and our big dominant ridge that's over the southeast finally starts to transition into a bit of a new pattern. And we really need to talk about that, okay? Because from the beginning of May until now, this is what we've seen. That has been the flow pattern. We've had this dominant trough sitting here, high latitude blocking, deep trough that just sits over the western part of the United States. And we are finally transitioning away from this, allowing for this ridge, which has influenced so much of the wet weather in the middle part of the country, to finally move. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm just going to play this so we can all see this change together. But again, what are we trying to get rid of? We're trying to get rid of this and this. That has been the dominating factors moving forward. And watch as I press play. Yeah, we deal with it this week. But slowly with time, as we progress into the month of June, look at the different pattern that evolves. What I want you to see here is that the models are telling us that they're getting rid of this deeper structure that's been sitting over here with that trough, and instead moving over to a pattern that may be featuring but quite a bit more broader ridging across this section of the country. Now, we still do see a flow pattern that dips a little bit here over the west coast, but this is, again, a different look over what we have been seeing. Now, the problem is this is not a dry pattern. This is a drier pattern than we've seen, but this is not a dry pattern for the places that have been wet. And you're going to be able to see here when you just look over the next 15 days of total accumulated precipitation that, yes, a lot of what we see inside that corridor is coming in the next few days. But as this ridge shifts this direction, and we break down that flow pattern of that broader trough that we've seen here, we still expect to see in this area, right in through here, a very active pattern. So it's not as though it's going to just get hot and dry in June. Instead, we're going to possibly carry on with a bit of a cooler bias once we enter the month of June. And that region I just kind of highlighted there and just colored over and over again, I think is going to be dealing with some more, like we said, ring of fire. It flows around the ridge, the surface ridge. And we've got plenty of moisture to be working with for this. So the pattern is, like I said, drier than it is now. And that's a change that I think many of us will welcome, but it's still going to be wet. To show you some of the details here, let's play out our European model. Beginning early in the morning, we've already seen this. Here's the thunderstorm complex that's moving through parts of the Central Plains. As I click play, you'll see that with time throughout the day, on Monday into Tuesday, this spreads again into Iowa. It spreads into Minnesota, Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, Indiana, Michigan. So that's the first one. And you can just see the flow like this around that broader ridge over the southeast. So then again, this is now getting us to middle of the day on Tuesday. We're watching that same quarter. See it? This is now Tuesday night. Same path of that next system. By Thursday, you can see another surge coming up through parts of Oklahoma and Texas, coming into Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, pushing into the eastern Corn Belt. It's now that we get into the month of June where things just start to change a little bit. So I'm now up to June 1st, June 2nd. You're going to notice storm systems, instead of coming out of the west here, fueled by the ridge over the southeast, we get a little bit more of what we call northwestern flow. And that's flow that's aloft coming down, basically from this direction. And that shift, that change is what's going to be important for just breaking us away from this pattern. But as you see, I've got you out to June 5th here. It's not as though you just saw me paint a big bullseye of no precipitation in the area that we've been so incredibly wet. So there is the pattern change coming. We still have 3 more waves that are moving through before the pattern change gets here, which is why that 10-day precip map looks so wet. But change is coming, okay? And that is what's good to see here. Giving you a quick global update, what we're going to be seeing throughout Europe over much of this week is that still hanging on to the slight cool bias here in parts of Central Europe, but certainly the Russian wheat belt north of the Black Sea, Ukraine, this area and through here carrying a warm bias throughout much of this next week. And as you can see over here, a drier bias. Much of our wetter conditions are going to be tucked right in here into the central part of Europe. Moving over to China, I want to talk about China for a moment, and India. This map here shows you, I want you to be looking for this color because it shows you where we're growing crops in this part of the world. So of course, much of India is agriculturally productive, but I want you to remember this region and this region when we talk about China. So just north of the Korean Peninsula and just to the west of the Korean Peninsula, that's the most productive land. Because when we look over the next several days, we are going to see this part of China's main growing region see some pretty extreme heat. We're talking temperatures here getting up in the triple digits at times, whereas the northern growing regions are still warm, but not nearly as hot. India is very, very hot over the coming weeks. In fact, I don't see that breaking down anytime soon. But let's now come over to this map, which shows precipitation getting you through the next week. And what do we see during that very hot time period? It's going to be very, very dry in those southern growing regions, or I should say in the southern half of the northern growing regions in China here. So we're going to continue to see very hot and dry conditions persisting throughout the week. And we're going to start to pay attention to see if this becomes much of a weather story with time. Okay, I want to take you lastly down to Australia, where we've seen the first of what could be a few big cold waves moving through. You can see the cooler anomalies forecast for the rest of this week. But look at this. We've even brought some snow down here to some of the higher elevations. Now, when we see these cold waves move in, we're about remember they're a month away from starting their winter here. But where are they in their crop cycle? We can see here. This is the transition from May to June. So if I just kind of draw a line right down here, we're mostly in the harvest of all the main crops except for wheat, which is into planting right now. But remember, we're talking about that's all happening right in through this corridor here on the other side of the mountains. So I want to give you a quick update about Australia as we wrap this one up. But with that, I think we're going to finish it right there. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions want to thank you for your attention. We hope you look forward to all of our ag forecasts coming out this week. Have a safe and happy Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.